Okay. So give me 1 second. I'm switching my screens over.
Don, you want me to
All
share
right.
the agenda?
No, it's fine. I have it in front of me. I just needed to. So Frank Cannon. Is Frank with us today? I haven't seen him yet, but I have 3 screens of people. No Frank today, it looks like. Justin Cameron.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Don, I'm going to leave the meeting and come back. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to get started without me. I am really sorry. I will be right back.
She can't hear me, but it's fine. Justin, hope you're enjoying your summer. Peter Fishalis.
Present.
Good morning. Don Gariello, I'm here. John Harris. Thought I saw John. Yes, I see him. I can't hear you though, John.
Here.
Yep, thank you. Russ Hughes.
Here.
Good morning. Lori Hunter.
Good morning.
Good morning. Matt Johnson.
Here.
Good morning. Oh, we need to take Amanda's name off the list, Hill, if you don't mind. Carrie LaFleur.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, good morning.
morning.
Pat Nelson. Good morning. Pat Nelson is rejoining us, so I'm going to call her here, even though she had to drop off for audio purposes. Chris Popoff.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Charlie Parker.
Here.
Good morning. Matt Root.
Yeah, and I have to jump at 9. Hard.
Okay, no problem, Matt. Bob Conry. Do we have him with us?
Oh, no. He officially
No.
starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I was going to have you introduce him if he was here, Lori. Just so everyone knows, he is Lori's new Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. So when he does have a chance to join us, I will have Lori give him an intro and have him say a few words. Steve Stashewski.
Present, but I have to leave
Hi.
at 15, sorry.
Yep, I got your email, Steve. Thank you. And Gail Dowd.
Yes, here.
Hi, Gail. Good morning, everyone. Do we have Pat back?
You do have
No.
Pat back, and
Oh
I
my
have
God.
sound. Yes, yeah.
Hello and good morning. Now that we can hear you and you can hear us, it sounds like.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all good now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can proceed. So before we proceed, I want to start the meeting with kind of setting some expectations for this morning's meeting. First of all, I want to acknowledge that Court had asked if we could meet in person, and I'm home with COVID, so I was less than enthusiastic about that. And Dawn and I talked about it and just felt that this was not the time to try to bring 20 people together in a room. So I respect Court's wishes. I really would love to be in person again, but just given the circumstances. Yeah. The other thing I want to just establish is we have a big meeting today. It's going to be packed with information, and we've got some of our professionals here and some of the professionals we don't typically see. So I want to think of this as really a listening meeting and a paying attention meeting. Last week, you all got the reconciled DD estimates. And that, is certainly something that is probably weighing heavily on everyone's mind, and people are wanting to talk about specific solutions. But I'd like to set the expectation that this is not a time for us to come to solutions, but rather a time for us to listen to the professionals. There is no question that we are in really uncertain times around the cost of this project, just because of the external factors in the world. This project has, more than any that I've ever seen, been buffeted by external circumstances, COVID, the economy, the world situation. So we have a group of experts with us today that I think that I want to ask everyone to listen very, very carefully to. Before the end of the meeting, we'll be looking at those options that Ian outlined in his email, which you all received. If anyone didn't receive it, please let me know, but you should have all received it.
Pat, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We've had a couple people that have had issues receiving like the middle school building committee emails. Can everyone just check, make sure it's not in your junk box or being blocked or in your clutter? Like Ian, last night, yours actually ended up in my clutter,
No.
which is why I was having a problem with the link, I think. So just, I know there's been a few issues. I just want to point out, if everyone could double check that, make sure you're receiving them. You should have received Ian's last night. Pat sent one last week and I responded asking if folks couldn't make it today. So just if everyone could check for like 2 or 3 emails in the last couple of days, just to make sure everyone's receiving it, that might be helpful, because we want to make sure the list is updated appropriately and that everyone's receiving important information. Thank you.
Yeah, is there anyone on this call who did not get the DD estimate? And
I
has,
didn't get the original one. Ian sent the messages last night explicitly to me, so I don't know if the problems were resolved or not.
so,
I've had problems periodically with getting messages.
okay, but you do,
I knew Matt had an issue, so I copied him and Matt Root as well outside of the CMSBC email. So
so I just want to make sure everybody's operating from the same point with information.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And so, like, for example, if there were any replies to the DD estimate, I didn't get any. So,
There were none.
okay.
There were no replies that I saw. So, yeah. Okay,
I'm having the same issue, but I'll try and fix it offline.
Steve,
It's
you're
the
having,
Matt filter.
It is, yep.
so is that, oh, it's the Matt filter. Okay, all right. Yeah,
Can you speak a little to the committee's obligations? I always look at meetings for the balance between information and outcomes.
Court,
there
I'm headed
any-
in that direction.
Are
That's
there any
my,
outcomes or obligations in your mind
Yep.
toward
that's my
toward
next sentence.
responding to the budget?
That's my next sentence. So so we do have a task this morning. There is something that there is an outcome we have to come up with this morning. We have to give our design team the green light to continue to design the building that was voted on at the town meeting. We will discuss the options that could address the budget and some of the risks associated with those options. But we are not going to start looking at any ways that we could reduce the cost of the building right now. That is not on the table for today. Our task is to be really thoughtful and listen to the professionals and understand the situation. That this is not an easy, if anybody thought being on this building committee was going to be easy, we're in such a difficult time in terms of estimating the cost of it. So, Court, I hope that helps. Our task is to really listen today. And then at the end of the meeting, we're going to need to provide our professionals with guidance on where to go next. Okay.
Is that in the form of a vote?
Yes, I think that's on the agenda under item 3, next step, vote to provide SMMA approval to proceed with contract.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was to be at this meeting or a subsequent meeting.
It's on this agenda, so it's at this, it would be at
Yeah, I
this.
just said next step, so I didn't know if that next step was meant to be
Oh.
today.
Oh,
I know that we'll get into deeper discussions, but my fundamental question is whether we can responsibly take that vote if a scope change to the building is on the table, and that, designing a building that we're not going to build does seem perhaps problematic. So I don't need to jump into that discussion now, but to just say that that's the overriding question on my mind.
So Matt, that great question, and that is what I hope by the end of the meeting and by the end of our discussion, we as a group can come to have some conclusion around going forward. There are options that we'll be discussing and risks that are associated with those options, but we're not going to be looking at scope changes right now. Now, that might come up as part of an option going forward, but that's not what we're going to do today. Okay.
Right, I just don't know if the next step would be to have those options proposed before we then proceed with design.
Okay, well, we'll when we get to that in the agenda, we can explore that. All right. So I think, having said all that, we can proceed with the OPMs with the second agenda item, which is, oh, we never approved the minutes.
I was just going to
All
remind you
right,
of that.
Pat,
Pat.
can I just ask
Minutes
Pat, can I just ask a quick logistic question?
Yeah.
Because I know a couple of people said they had to be off at 9. I also have to drop off 9, maybe 9:10 latest. Is this something, you said there's a lot of information, I don't want to keep delaying, but is this something we think we're going to wrap up by 9, or is this looking like it's going to go longer?
You know, that's a good point, Heather. Let me propose that we move approving the minutes to the end of the agenda so that we can get
So
to the
moved.
meat of the agenda.
Second,
All in favor? Oh, do I have to call a roll?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, these are not timed agenda items. It's the chair's prerogative to order, those items. If it's not a public hearing, you can just push it to the end.
Oh, I'm pushing it to the end then.
Perfect.
Thank you, Matt Johnson, Select Board. Okay, then let's go to the OPM's update and get into the meat of the meeting.
Great, thank you, Pat. So just a few orders of business before we start talking about the DD estimate here. We got cash flow, commissioning update, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion here this morning. So you guys can see my screen here. Cash flow.
Can you make it bigger? I think anything you can do to either full screen your presentation of numbers would be helpful, as we're going to be going through a lot of numbers. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you.
So this is the typical cash flow that you guys that we present every month. This takes us through June 2022. The actual expenditures to date is $2,775,153, and you're seeing the change from last month, which is some progress payments to both SMMA and Hill. And I provided the detail for you guys to see those. So SMMA's progress payment for design development, as well as some of their subs, and then Hill's OPM services for the month of May. So pretty straightforward there. And then the graph as well that we include as part of the packet. The next topic we had here was just the commissioning kickoff meeting. So we did have a successful kickoff meeting with AKF, SMMA, and Hill, and AKF was facilitating this meeting. It was kind of a meet and greet for the professionals, an opportunity for AKF to get some more background on the project, and some of the goals and things that we're trying to accomplish for the project. And then they talked through, the commissioning process through the design phase, and then the commissioning process through the construction, acceptance, and warranty phase, and kind of map that out from the starting block here, and put together kind of a general schedule here of when things are going to happen. So this was provided as part of your packet. One of the things that AKF did recently is they have reviewed the DD set. They did provide comments to the design team. The design team owes them responses on comments, and we can certainly share those. They will be in the overall DD package deliverable as well for everybody's use. Any questions there? No. Okay.
They go on and off.
So that kind of takes us into the design development estimate summary here. So just wanted to kind of start big picture, and then we can get more into the details. So estimates were sent last week. We spent, an entire day reconciling with both AM Fogarty and PM&C. Had a lot of good discussion, covered a lot of ground
In the way.
in that time frame, and we're able to come to a reconciled estimate of 86 million, which is over budget, not where we wanted to be, but we do know that the construction market is, this is a problem across the board. This is something that every project is dealing with right now, with inflated prices for labor and materials in the construction industry. So not the outcome we wanted, but not surprising as well. So this kind of summarizes our budget, the bidding contingency, just adding those two together and understanding what that value is for 82 million, and then comparing it against the reconciled DD estimate. So we're 5.3 million over from the construction budget itself, 3.3 million over from the budget and bidding contingency, just to give you guys a big picture narrative here on budget comparison.
Hold on, you want questions as we move?
Let's, Charlie, let's try to go through the whole presentation.
That's fine.
Yeah, and then get questions.
Good.
Thank you.
So that kind of takes us to, what else do we have left here, and what other controls do we have as far as looking at cost until we get to the bid phase. So this is a path to bidding, and what we would typically do on every project here. So we are going to have a 60% CD cost estimate. That's going to happen September through October, mid-October of this year, when the 60% CD set is ready. And this kind of takes away some of the unknowns. We're 3 months further along. We're going to know more about trends for the industry. Things are improving. If they're staying the same, if they're getting worse. And we're also going to have the same opportunity and snapshot for the 90% CD cost estimate in December at the end of the year. And again, less unknowns. The closer you get to bid time, the less unknowns there are with the market. And then ultimately putting out a 100% CD package and bid set February 22nd, 2023. And then bidding it and receiving those bids in this time frame, vetting those bids in this time frame in March, April. So kind of just a refresher on what we typically do and what we plan to do for this project as well, for design and estimating leading up to bidding. So next thing we wanted to talk about is, just big picture conversation about construction market conditions. And so we invited PM&C and AM Fogarty to join us this morning and provide some background and some of their thoughts. They're very intimate with this process. They estimate many school projects similar to yours. So they've got a really good understanding of the market. They've got a really good understanding of our projects, just spending as much time as they have looking at the drawings and specs. So I'll turn it over to Peter to kind of talk through some thoughts, and then we can have an exchange or Q&A with them.
And can you introduce them or have them introduce them? One of them is
Yeah.
your estimator. One of them is SMMA's. Can they? Hi, Peter and Peter, by the way.
Hello.
I've
Dawn.
done many projects with
Hi,
Peter and
Dawn.
Peter.
Good to see you again.
Excellent. Good to see you as well.
I'm
it's just
Peter
my
Bradley from PM&C.
Yeah.
We did the estimate on behalf of the OPM.
And I'm P. Timothy A.M. Fogarty, and I did the estimate for SMMA. You want me to go first? and
Ian,
just
do you
kinda
want to
give,
unshare? Ian, do you want to unshare your screen so we can see them?
I will do just that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in first.
Sure.
So, and I'm going to start off by, I'm going to be referring to the schematic estimate and where we are now at the DD and the changes and so forth, what we're seeing in the market. In the past 6-7 months, we have seen roofing numbers double. When membrane roof systems were $20 a square foot, now they're in the upper 30s a square foot. Structural steel has increased another 10% since we last did this estimate. Electrical, and I'm still not sure exactly what the increase is because we're still constantly getting feedback from the marketplace. But electrical switchgear, panels, copper has almost doubled. In some cases, I'm seeing that it's tripled in price. I'm talking switchgear, 1600 amp switchgear. That box, that component has tripled in material cost. We're seeing increases in HVAC systems, VRF, Mitsubishi increases. I heard yesterday that there's going to be a market increase in glass material costs of 40%. So we're seeing huge material increases almost on a daily basis. Now we monitor and look at filed sub-bid information. So we're constantly gauging our unit prices to try to predict what we're seeing at. And then we carry a certain percentage for escalation. So on this DD estimate, we're still carrying a 5% escalation, and that'll bring you to the bid, which is, I assume, 9 months away. We don't know if that's going to be a correct percentage or not. It could go up to 10%. It would be astronomical. The prices would be through the roof if that's the case. So we try not to overreact on some of these escalation line items, but we understand that they're going to be there. Pat, I think you had said that the costs are unpredictable. They are to a point, but I think the thing you can predict is it's going to increase for a while until it doesn't, until the market and everything completely slows down. We just don't know when that's going to happen quite yet. I think, I can't really talk on the supply chain and, the raw economics and what gas prices, that's, I'm not an economist. All I know is I'm reacting to the bids that we see, and in the marketplace. But I think the biggest culprit and the biggest takeaway is that manufacturers are only giving subcontractors a 30-day window for material pricing. And that now these subcontractors have to carry their own escalation out for another 6, 12, 18 months, sometimes depending on the material. And when they do that, they're just covering themselves so they don't lose money in the future. So I think they're carrying, 20, 30% increase on their bottom line on their material costs just to cover things that the manufacturers won't cover for them. So there's some inherent risk that's built into these numbers. That's kind of the big picture. Peter, I think you're seeing the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. We just opened file sub bids on a general contractor bid on Westwood Hanlon Elementary School project, which was about a $70 million school. The low bidder was about $4 million higher than that, about 6%. And we were able to do some investigative work in terms of talking to at least the architect and the OPM were, and some of the bidders to try and understand what was going on. Roofing was one that Peter alluded to that was just astronomically over, and one of the roofing subcontractors who actually withdrew their bid because they had a mathematical error and they had to provide a breakdown of of their bid, and they had carried 35% escalation on top of their bid, so that was $400,000 that they had just added. And that was, as P. Timothy alluded to, is just they can't get a guaranteed price on the roofing membrane from the supplier. So, and they have to guarantee the number. So they're covering themselves with a large percentage on top of that. That'll change. I mean, eventually, supply and demand are going to get back into sync again, and that those sort of 35% numbers that people are carrying are going to go away. So when it does change, it'll correct somewhat. We don't know when that will be, but it's unlikely that the pricing will go back to, you know, what roofing costs were 6 months ago, for example. It'll just be, it'll level off, and you may get some declines. So it's just, unfortunately, with all these MSBA projects that we're working on, we set the budgets, back in, schematic design. A lot of them were done last summer, even further, and so we're seeing this across the board, lots of, projects that, we're, pricing at DD or 60% CDs or even at 90%. We have to correct based on what we're seeing in the market. And that's, it's a painful process, it doesn't make it better knowing that everybody else is,
Right.
is dealing with the same issues. But that's it. It's I've been doing it for 30 years, and this is the worst I've ever seen the bidding market. We're used to being right 95% of the time in terms of our numbers, and now we're wrong 95% of the time, which is, it's pretty painful, as an estimator, to keep seeing bids come in higher, adjusting your numbers, and then seeing a bid come in even higher than what you thought it was, so, but what we've done here with this project, obviously we were adjusting our roofing costs, our steel numbers, our glass numbers, our drywall numbers, just to reflect what we're seeing in the market. So we're comfortable that we're capturing the market conditions today. We've got that escalation that Pete Timothy alluded to capture what we would think would happen when it goes out to bid. It's so uncertain that no one can stand here and guarantee you that that's what's going to happen. If prices continue to escalate the way they're doing, then we're going to be in a similar situation when we do the 60%. If things have changed, then we'll have a number of other bids this summer. We would obviously correct the numbers based on those bids. But what we're seeing right now is just not making us feel very optimistic.
Yeah, at least for the next 3 months, I cannot see anything changing, and I can only see it slowly ticking up from everything I'm hearing right now.
Peter, can I just ask you to explain one thing so people understand it? Both Peter Bradley, you just said it, but the numbers that we used for unit prices in today's dollars that are in the estimate before the additional escalation, those are based on the numbers you're receiving today.
Yes, correct.
So I just want to make sure,
correct.
because there are members of the public on. So basically, in the estimating process, when they estimate, they put into the estimate what it would cost if we bid today. So the roofing number that we carried at SD compared to the roofing number in the DD estimate is considerably higher, is almost double, because that's what they're bidding at right now. Plus, we still have another 5% escalation because we don't know where it's going. So the jump has been significant because of that. So it's not just that we've absorbed, more escalation, it's that we've absorbed the double and tripling of the material costs, and then are continuing to have the 5% escalation. Yes. And what is traditional as we move through a project is that escalation number traditionally goes down as you get closer to the bid date. But unfortunately for us, that escalation number has remained static because of the way the market is. So we haven't been able to take advantage of that reduction, which traditionally gets absorbed into the bid number. Instead, we have an inflated estimate because of the current bids, as well as that same number from escalation that we carried forward. So we're sort of getting hit with a double whammy.
Can I ask a question along those lines then? So in about 3 months, we'll have another estimate. And my understanding from talking with the architects and Hill is that in 3 months, we could make some significant changes to the project if we had to. Would we still be carrying that 5%? Would the estimators still be assuming that 5% escalation in 3 months? Or is that a crystal ball question?
Well, the way we'll handle, we'll reprice the job again. We'll look at the marketplace. We'll be analyzing file subbids and making adjustments and repricing the job when we do the 60%. Then we'll look at the future again, and then we'll adjust that escalation line. Maybe it'll stay 5%, maybe it'll drop down to 3%. We will take a complete new look at it.
Pete, this is Peter Martini. I just wanted to
echo what you or Pete had said regarding some examples in the elementary school you had. Those projects really are hit in a bad time because there has been a lot of changes in the last 3 to 6 months. And jobs that are bidding right now are paying the price for the time period of which they estimated and when they bid. We've had just other examples. We've had 4 different pricing exercises coming here for during DD, number one, that have gone up right now, and a couple that we've actually bid, and we've had a record, a pretty amazing record the industry has over the last year or two of coming in under estimates, and we come in over on a couple of them. None of them stopped the job. So I just want to echo your comment about specific examples.
Don, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions for Peter and Peter. Just so everyone knows, approximately what % of your estimating is on public school work? Approximately. It's a
MSBA?
ton, right? Yeah, yeah, a non-MS, like public school work. So this is a non-MSBA project.
Well,
And I
yeah.
realize you guys do a lot of MSBA, but schools in particular.
45% from the hip, something like that, a fair amount.
A fair amount. I mean,
Yeah,
I see you guys on
60% maybe of our work would be
public schools.
public and private school too. You know,
Yeah.
we do a fair amount of private school work as well.
I mean, I feel like I see at least one of your names, if not both, on 90% of the schools that I am affiliated with. So a good amount of schools. So you guys are tracking all the MSBA numbers, all the public bids, all the filed sub bids, everything. How many bids do you expect to come through over the summer, like on schoolwork? Are there like 6 projects, 8 projects, 2 projects? Do you have a handle on how many you're tracking?
I think between now and September, I think we'll probably have about 4. I think,
okay.
you know, that are school MS. These are all MSBA projects.
Okay.
Yes,
And
September,
Peter?
October for us. August is going to be very quiet.
Okay. So like 4 or 5. Yeah, I'm just wondering what the gauge will be, right? Like how many, because those are the real numbers. You can estimate, I mean, you guys do this all day long, all year long, but it's the real numbers that are coming in that are what is informing your estimating, right? So
yes,
and
absolutely.
are you seeing a difference in design bid build numbers versus construction manager at risk numbers? I know the filed sub bids are the great equalizer. They are what they are, and roofing is one of them, right?
Mhm.
So that's one that will be, you know, the same no matter who is doing the actual general contracting or construction management. Are you seeing a huge difference there?
It's even worse on our CM projects. You know, we have a maybe 4 or 5 right now with CMs, you know, that are in various stages of, you know, one of them has already had the file sub bids, you know, and trying to get to GMP. They're way over budget on that one. It's a project in the city of Boston. Others are, you know, it's similar, you know, to Concord or, you know, in the sort of DD 60% CD, and just the feedback we're getting, you know, from the consiglees of the world, and you know, that we're the CMs is, you know, they're really struggling with drywall pricing, and, you know, site work numbers are really, really high, are getting very much interest in bids from the subcontractor community. The CM world, they're traditionally, you know, they would be 100% signatory to carpenters and laborers unions, so their pool of bidders is a little tighter than in the design bid world, which is just prevailing wage contractors. So, you know, when everybody's busy, but in their world, everybody is like stretched thin, you know, so it's just the numbers that we're getting on the CM side are really eye-opening sometimes, you know, with some projects.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I'm seeing the same thing, and the constant comment I get back is just the limited pool of subcontractors at the CM level, the number of site contractors, the form work guys and so forth. They only seem to be running into 2 or 3 bids at the most when they do their GMP.
Yeah.
I have an MSBA question that's related. You have obviously a lot of experience with MSBA projects.
Charlie, hold on.
What's going on with MSBA? What is going on with MSBA projects relative to situations at the end of DD where they're significantly over budget
Charlie,
at the end of DD?
Charlie,
Yeah.
Charlie, let's hold on that question. I'm not sure that Dawn had gotten her complete answer on her question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, and maybe we can, and I think where you're going with that is something that is better addressed when we've finished all the presentation. Okay, because I think we're going to be talking about some of those options. So Dawn, were you trying to finish something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had one other question for Peter and Peter. When we talk about roofing, and I'm seeing this on my projects, but I tend to use a lot of the same types of roofing. Are you seeing it across the board, no matter the type of roof? It's just roofing in general. Like we just had to put a temp roof on because they couldn't actually get our actual spec roof on a project I'm working on. So I didn't know if it was a type of roofing or across the board roofing, whether you're, specing one type over another.
Yeah, no,
I
was hoping it would just be, PVC and you can switch to, EPDM, but
Right,
that's not what we're seeing. It seems even asphalt roof. I mean, it just seems roofing general. And I think, the roof, I was really scratching my head on roofing particularly because, it went up so much, not like a 5% escalation, like a doubling in number, which is just kind of unheard of. And I think part of it is the uncertainty and they got to guarantee their number. Part of it is it's a pretty simple kind of trade, and a lot of it is material. So it's, the typical, rule of thumb that we use, would be like, 40% of a job is material and 60% is labor, I think roofing is probably 80-20, 80% being material cost and 20% being labor, so I think they're just more susceptible to those pricing increases. I suspect there's probably, when you start buying, millions of square feet of PVC roofing, there's probably only a couple of manufacturers that are manufacturing the product. So it doesn't take much for that, that particular material to have a supply chain issue and have material spikes, but we've never seen it before ever in roofing. It's just, it's always been a pretty steady, and it's a file sub bid, we're constantly getting, pricing back on it, so, but, I think that's the issue right there, is material is a big part of that particular.
There are huge material shortages, thus the price is going up. I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's kind of the gist of it. It takes months to get board, if you can even get it. Same thing with the membranes. It's just, there's a big demand, but there's no supply.
No, that's helpful because as I'm thinking through scenarios or potential, options that we might have, it's not necessarily going to be a cost savings to spec a different type of roof. It's a general roof issue. So that's
all
really
membrane.
helpful.
It's all installation. It's all recovery board.
Yeah.
You probably have the same problem if it was a metal roof, slate, you name it.
Yeah. I wasn't going to propose sleeve, but
no, but you have the same problem.
That's the end of my questions, Pat. Thank you, Peter and Peter. Very helpful.
I want to keep this conversation sort of focused on, I think our task as a committee is to feel comfortable with these estimates, to listen to these professionals, and for the committee members to say, these guys have done a thorough job and we have a good understanding of the volatility or the uncertainty, but not getting into sort of specifics about materials or specific things. So if people have questions that will help you feel confident estimates and the work that our estimators are doing, I'd like to entertain those first.
Well, Pat, I'd seek out Peter Martini's comment on the following. Peter, I'm not surprised at any of these numbers. I think we've been anticipating them for a long time, quite a long time. Were you surprised, or did this land actually in a place where you thought it could have been worse at this point?
Just Peter Martini?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we did an analysis for the town of Needham in April. And we went through everything up to the end of March, beginning of April, and where everything was. And we were seeing somewhere around 1% a month during 2022. It gave me pause because middle of April, May, and June, that it was becoming more than 1%, and that's what we were hearing about all these inflation issues. So when I was hearing all that, knowing when we put the schematic in, and knowing when this most recent 30% was going to come, it really gave us concern. We had a report from the name Consiglio was just mentioned. They put out a report that was talking about 0.5% per month, and that was in April, and then May and June things kept going up. So yes, I was pretty concerned when we started to put the numbers together for the 30% that something like this may happen. So as far as was I less concerned? Did I think it was going to be worse? No, I mean, this was kind of in my mind what we were putting together on the issues that have happened since March, April, May, that we were going to see another uptick that wasn't anticipated in the schematic. So, you know, that's where we're at now. Now, just to finish up, Court, I don't know whether this is part of the question. The unknowns moving forward, which we have, you know, people are talking about more inflation. People are talking about labor shortages. All these sort of things that are going to be may or may not happen in the next 8 months, including the possibility of something that is not good, but could help hitting a recession. All of those unknowns, we've all thought over the last year that we can predict these things, and we've done a pretty good job understanding that the times. But all of those issues have a way bigger effect on the ultimate cost of this job than the design, which is pretty interesting in the history of doing this.
Well, that's helpful. And I want to credit your firm, just personally credit your firm with giving us actually a couple of years now to anticipate this kind of uncertainty and give us the stomach to handle it. So thank you for that.
Matt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, a question for the estimators, because you see a variety of projects, you know, you kind of know what $100 million school kind of looks like in estimating buckets. Are there aspects to our project that kind of stand out as, hey, this is a bigger chunk of money than you would normally see for this category? Or, you know, it's something that gives us some indication that if we were to make a design change or a scope change to deal with this, realizing that you're not familiar with the specific objectives of the project or so on. It's just that, you know, when you're looking down the list of your estimate, it's like, wow, that's a bigger number than you'd normally see for that category.
I don't see the design of this building being elaborate or anything out of the ordinary. And we've also, since we've been doing this, we've been slowly creating VE or better options to do things. The site work in particular, how the soil is reused and so forth. We've gone through all those scenarios to make sure that there isn't any excessiveness in the design or the logistics of the job. So I think that's all been vetted out if there was much of anything anyways.
Yeah, Matt, I would just add that when I heard the number come in, saw the estimates that came in right before the reconciliation, my first question to Ian was, okay, let's go through the list. Was there some big miss during the schematic? Did we miss an item? Did we Was there something that there was a mistake made? No. What did the design team somehow have to add some scope? Did some material, were there fancier materials? Did they increase the size of the building? No, they will all stay true to where they were. So those were the first two questions I had. So it's like, okay, then we're dealing with material and labor.
Yeah, it's just, when we've got it sort of a fixed amount of money to work with, we got to do something then. I thought it might be an easy win if we did have some category that we said, okay, we could easily go after that. Looks like we've got to get, tougher in terms of scope change or something to be able to stay within budget.
So that's exactly the where we're going to go when we look at the options that Ian laid out, the risks associated with those options, the timing of when the architects can make some changes, and the responsibilities we have as a committee to keep the project going, and what direction it's going to go in. So Ian, you want to continue with your presentation? Unless somebody else has a follow-up question to this. I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay, Ian.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Fogarty, and thank you, estimators.
Welcome. I'll listen in though for the.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to stay if you like. If you have to jump, you can do that as well. I'm going to go through the details of the reconciliation sheet as well as the comparison, just to talk through what was sent. And this was revised yesterday. We got the details from both PM&C and AM Fogarty. There was minimal changes on the dollar value. We just wanted to make sure the reconciliation sheet matched those detailed estimates. So we had to go back and scrub this a bit. Nothing really significant in the end, but just wanted to make sure the numbers jived. So, this is the side-by-side comparison of PM&C's numbers versus AM Fogarty's numbers. And then you have the reconciled value in the left column here, which is just an average of the two. And this is the same approach that we took at schematic design. Same exact format.
I'm just going to stop a second. Yep. I'm realizing that if PM&C and Fogarty can stay on for this part, that'd be really important. And I can't see on my screen who's here. So I hope you guys are still here.
Yes,
yep, I'm here.
Great.
I'll
Great.
listening in. So holler if you have any questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So you can kind of see, the numbers, they never match up perfectly here. So there is some variance and some acceptable tolerance between the numbers, and that's why we have to come to a reconciled value and typically use the average to do so. The first section here is substructure, foundations and basement construction. Some variance there, close to 400,000. Then you get into the shell of the building. This is the steel and concrete roofing for the structure itself. Closer by comparison there. This section C is interiors, which is all the partitions, interior doors, millwork, stairs, and then finishes as well. So pretty close to one another on that section. Services, you've got elevators, plumbing, HVAC, fire protection, and electrical. Those were very tight numbers in comparison. And then you've got equipment and furnishings, which is just general equipment, things that are fixed to the building, as well as furnishings there. $72,000 difference between the two. The special construction section is just the building demo. So the existing building and the hazardous abatement. they're carrying the same exact numbers for the abatement that was provided by Novus. And then, just a little bit of variance in the demolition costs and assumptions. And then big section here, site work for the site prep. This is all the soil management aspect of the job, the site improvements, including the new fields, all the utilities that come onto the site, all the electric on site. So, kind of a decent spread there, close to $400,000 difference in opinions. And then markups. So PM&C, let's see. Yep. PM&C carried 4.67% escalation, and AM Fogarty carried 5% escalation. So that's the variance between those two. They're both carrying this exact same design and estimated contingency at 5%. The general conditions are exactly the same at a certain value per month at 20 months. Same with the site work assumptions for 7 months for the site work. You've got very similar values here for general requirements at 2%, bonds at 1%. 1% versus 0.9%. Insurance is the same. Overhead and profits the same. So these are kind of the markups on the job. Some variance there overall, and it's essentially they're within $700,000 of one another, which is under 2%. This is an acceptable standard in the reconciliation world here. Put some notes on here. These are similar notes to what you saw last time, but just outlining the variance between the two. Other FF&E is included in the soft costs for things that aren't fixed to the building. The hard costs do have the security scope. Technology scope is in the soft costs. Building demo assumptions here for the main building and modular units. Again, the hazardous materials was per the Novus environmental survey and report. This details just the difference in escalation variation there, which is a good chunk of the overall variation. They assume the same for general conditions and assume that there's no fees, that the permit fees would be waived on this project. So that's kind of the reconciliation summary and format, again, that you'd seen previous. Any questions on that before we move into the next comparison between SD and DD?
I just was struck by how close the escalation percentages were. I mean, that's the most potentially speculative number on the list, but there are only 33 basis points between the two estimates of escalation.
Yep.
Yeah, as we reconcile, we looked at each other's unit prices. We talk about our database and our experience, and Peter does the same thing. The reconciliation process tends to balance that off. And then when we're done trying to, determine the direct costs, then we look at the percentages for contingency and escalation, and we talk through it. So they tend to balance each other off.
They go to the same church, Matt.
All right, so this is the comparison between the DD values and the SD values, and some things to keep in mind here. These are the raw numbers from the estimates. So the schematic design reconciled value does not. You'll notice that it doesn't include the value management that was taken. We typically don't go back and make those adjustments. I guess we certainly could if you wanted to see that comparison, but we just wanted to give you a general flavor of this is what we estimated last year, and this is what we estimated this year at DD, and show the variance and a lot of increases as we were alluding to earlier. So same format, substructure is actually under in this scenario. So cost held pretty closely.
That's because of the soils, Ian. That's because of the soils.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point. That's one of the big exercises that we did during the reconciliation is their assumptions last year to export a certain amount of material offsite and import a certain amount of material to the site to reach the subsurface elevations for the building and also for the site itself. So those assumptions we were able to change by changing strategy, trying to reuse as much material as we can on site, and looking at the cut and fill plan a little closer, and figuring out that, hey, basically all the topsoil that we're generating from the site can be reused on site, and we need to import a little more. And
So does that mean then that the new DD estimate includes not only the value management items we took, but even some that we hadn't officially taken that we then were? So really this DD estimate has a little bit more wind in its back in theory, but even so is a lot more.
Yeah. It's, from a soil management perspective, this is something we obviously wanted to do is to try and improve how we're using soil on site, and maximizing reuse on site. So we went ahead and accounted for those adjustments in the DD estimate.
Yeah, so you might remember we did our geotechnical investigations in depth after SD. So as a result of the geotechnical analysis and the soils that we found on site, our geotech was able to recommend reuse of soils. There will be some soil management. We do have glacial till out there, so there is some management of the soil that you'll have to do for that reuse, but definitely have been able to look at that, analyze it, and determine that we can reuse most of the soils that we're going to have out there. Which is, to your point, Matt, great, because we've taken that savings that we held, but the numbers are still bad.
Yeah, one way to look at it is that we improved the soil management plan. We realized those savings, they were offset to some degree by increased prices. So you're seeing the balance of that here as a generally a net savings.
So does that mean we're finished with the soils VE item?
There's one last piece. So there's going to be some spoils and the forest mat that we are exporting that I'll need to get some testing done on, because we won't reuse forest mat. Just it's not good for anything. So,
okay.
And that includes the DD estimate includes exporting that forest mat.
Well, I think we should update the $80,700,000 number to reflect the net improvements in these VEs. There was the soils, and there was acoustic screening that we never, as a committee, finished. I'm glad to hear that you have been working on those and that we're making progress, but we probably ought to fix that number. Is that fair, Ian?
Well, I think though that, Charlie, if what you're trying to do is get to an apples to apples comparison of this, there's other factors that have changed. So for example, this construction period has been reduced to 20 months, which also reduces the number in the DD estimate relative to schematic design. And then finally, the DD estimate carries a lower contingency on the construction relative to the schematic design. So all, those two other factors contribute to what should be a more favorable number for the DD estimate, but instead it's not. So if you were trying to get to apples, we're not off by, 5 million, we're off by more.
Yes, correct. We're off by more. That's right.
Dawn, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to be clear with everyone, because I'm not sure that everyone understood that the schematic design number is pre-VE you just didn't go back. We took all the VE that we agreed on. So that's reflected in the design
I
development.
understand, it's all totally legit. It's just that if you were now trying to understand by what percentage, these new numbers are going up, you need to kind of apply all those other changes. And it's not just the VE stuff that's not reflected, but it's also other changes in assumptions in the DD estimate. That's all.
I guess we never got a clean exit from SD with a number. We had a incompleted piece of work. At least
I don't think it's.
that was my.
Okay, I'm gonna try to rein this in a little bit and just again ask that everyone raise their hand before they speak so that we don't get into a long conversations. We've got a lot to cover. And I think our goal today is to understand what our options are going forward. And and if this discussion moves us towards understanding that, fine, but I'm not sure it does. I kind of like to hear the rest of Ian's presentation and then get into what the options are. And yeah, so I want to keep this moving unless there are people who really feel like this is going to get us to where we want to go, which is at the end of the day, to be able to recommend that that the designers continue with this process as the building was designed, or if we're going to opt for another option. But we need to have that conversation in a global context, not in specifics.
Yeah, I would just add that it's hard to get to an apples to apples comparison. These are snapshots in time with different assumptions, and it would be a challenge to try and get there and show you a true comparison.
Thank you, Ian.
Yep. So kind of going down through this a little more, the superstructure difference, we've got an increase of 2.2 million overall, which includes the roof coverings. Talked a lot about roof escalation, prices doubling. Steel is in here as well, so that was a big hit. It's just the shell of the building. Interiors, there's a $1.5 million increase on interiors. Basically all the guts of the building and finishes, including drywall, which was another talking point. Services, this is all HVAC, fire protection, plumbing, electrical. We talked about those prices as well, doubling, tripling in some circumstances. Also a big hit, 2.2 million increase. And then some adjustments on equipment and furnishings, $475,000 change increase there. The building demo was roughly the same. Site work went up as well, incrementally, 614,000. And we made all the adjustments and markup. And again, we're not carrying the same assumptions here. So at SD, we were at 5.25% for a certain duration. We've changed the escalation assumptions. You were 10% for design and estimating contingency in SD. We're at 5% now in DD. We went from 24 months in SD for construction duration to 20 months. So some improvements and savings realized there. And then, kind of all the other markups and assumptions here, which are all similar or the same. So overall, $3.5 million difference between the DD estimate, again, without the value management, the SD estimate without the value management realized, and the DD estimate with the value management realized. So that's that comparison sheet. We've talked about the value management log. It's something that is a work in progress. It's something that we carry throughout the design phase. We continue to massage and add things to it, make changes, and that's something that we will continue to develop through the 90% CDs throughout the estimating process here. Just to speak on that. And then this gets us to, what do we do? How do we react to this? What are the next steps? And really the most important thing here is to make a decision on proceeding with the contract documents, giving SMMA authorization to proceed with the contract documents. So I can go through, last week, I sent just some initial thoughts on now, and we can kind of talk through that. Is that where you want me to head with this, Pat?
Ian, you
Done.
froze for a second. Could you repeat that last part? You froze.
So I sent an email last week. In the body of the email, when we transmitted the estimates, it had some initial thoughts on options. I can go through that now, if that's where we want to head with this.
I think that's what we want to do. And I think this is a really key part of this meeting. I just want to say that as co-chairs, one of the things that's been at the top of my mind is at what point can we make changes, that the architects can make changes if we have to. So that's sort of what drives my thinking, is when we have to make hard decisions. So that's all I'll say about that. But I think we want to go on to your next slide, Ian.
Yep. Okay.
And
So this is again just kind of a recap of the email I sent last week. Some things to consider, and these are not all of the potential options, but these are some options that we thought of initially here. So option one here is do nothing. Let these numbers ride out, reassess at the 60% CD estimate in September, October of this year. And some of the things that we would look for here is potential, correction of the market or improvements in any way. So what that could look like is this scenario. So we've got our budget and bidding contingency at 82,791,000. And if you take out, just to show you guys, if you take out the escalation on our DD estimate, you're roughly at the same value here. So if these numbers carry, so we have current market prices, if these numbers carry through bid time and go largely unchanged, they don't continue to escalate, they don't improve in any way, but they just carry through, you're roughly at your budget with the bidding contingency. Important to note, with the bidding contingency. So that's just a potential scenario, something that we thought you should consider or think through. The risk in that is that the escalation continues, and that we continue to see prices go up, and we do have, again, these controls, these snapshots in time, and the next snapshot is 60% CD. Sorry, yeah, I should put CD here, but 60% CDs when we will be doing the next estimate. And so that is the next opportunity to do a deep dive and to do a value management exercise again. And so there is time to do that. There is time to go through that process. Option two, ask for more money. Not a very palatable option here. You could risk going back and asking for more money and getting it voted down. You could ask for more money and receive that money, and then you find out during bid time you don't really need it. So you're taking more money than you really need. Option three is to value management now, to get to the construction budget of 80,772,447. The risk there is unnecessary scope cuts, kind of in the same scenario in option 4, where you've added the bidding contingency to that. So you're value managing to 82.7 million, where you're also risking unnecessary scope cuts. You think about taking things out of a project. The last thing you want to do is find out that you really didn't need to do that, that you could have gotten more at bid time. So, and then the last option here is pause the design. Another option that isn't very palatable as well. It just increases the risk of the unknowns. It pushes out the bid. So this would look like, pencils down, architect stops. We wait on things to change or improve or do whatever the market does, and put this out to bid at a later date in hopes that you'd get a better result. But it's, again, the further away you get from the bid time, the more unknowns you have. So you're increasing your unknown by pushing out the bid. So again, these are some scenarios here that we thought through. I do think, just speaking on our opinion here, I do think it's safe to push this to the next estimate phase and to really see how things pan out over time. You do have the time to do that. You do have the opportunity to do that at 60% DD CD. Yep.
Lorraine, can you just say a few words about how the architects would be responding if we needed to do something more significant at 60%? If we told you to go ahead now, design, what would happen at 60% if we needed to make some cuts?
I think because of where we are with the magnitude of the overage, we're talking about large cuts. We're not talking about, death by 1,000 cuts. And so I'm gonna be the person you can shoot the messenger. It's reducing the size of the gym. It's eliminating the auditorium. It's not doing the fields. This is the order of magnitude we're at. So from a design perspective, for us to continue to advance to the 60% CDs, that would be sort of our limit if we were to take something out after that with that magnitude. So I think we're at DD, the design, so just to back up again, I guess, schematic design is getting the concept, understanding the scope, the budget, and the quality, getting the square footage set. DD is flushing out that scope and the design. So we understand the materiality, we get some of the adjacencies done. We did another round of our educational programming to make sure everything was there. In CDs, we don't do that. CDs is truly, advancing the documents so the bidder can bid, quantify, and build the project. So it is enhancing the details. So for Peter and Peter, it gives them more clarity of what our intent was, how things are going to be built. But from a DD perspective, it gives them the concept at a higher level. Our materiality, our quantities are better. At CDs, it tells them how we're going to put it together. So from our position, we can wait to the 60% CDs. Yes, we can. That would be the furthest we would wait, because after that, it becomes really hard to unravel and pull some of those things out. But we'd be talking about large scale items. This is not, we do not have a brick building. Brick buildings are one of the cheapest. We've gone to the ground face CMU, which is cheaper again. So, we have a PVC roof. We're not really going to change from a PVC roof. I doubt we're going to go back to EPDM. It's got the same issues and it's a black roof. It's not going to be sustainable. We're at a point where if you look at some of the finishes and the materials, it's already there. So again, death by 1,000 cuts is not really an option. We're talking about large scale scope removals.
So just to sum up in my simplistic way, you guys could continue, the project could keep moving forward. And at 60%, we could say, okay, now we have to make some really hard decisions. if we make those really hard decisions now, we're making them with less information. And as Ian has outlined below, we risk making some scope cuts that you would design to that we don't need to.
Right, in order to get to, you know, if these numbers hold,
If these
those
numbers
cuts are huge huge cuts, and they would not remain as an ad alternate. It would be very complicated for bidders. So we'd want to understand, you know, how many trades are involved. Once you have multiple trades involved in an alternate, it does add some risk for the bidding. So then you don't always get your value for money. And if we were to remove something of significant scope, I mean, there's quite a bit of moving and shifting that needs to be done with the diagrams and the plans, the site planning. So it would need to be done at 60%, and then we wouldn't be adding it back.
Okay. Okay. Matt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Ian, I mean, the bidding contingency is just that, a bidding contingency. It's not a construction and estimating contingency. So I'm really confused about how you're applying that here when we're still, you know, trying to enter the construction document stage. We heard from the estimators that there was a recent project that they had 100% estimate and they got in a bid that was 6% higher. That's what the bidding contingency is for. It's not for putting, you know, rolling in here and then praying that somehow the bids are going to come on, you know, right on or under budget. So I think we should rip this out of here. It shouldn't be in any of our scenarios at this stage. The point was to deal with the uncertainty. And I believe that our estimators did describe, you know, that they still have a kind of a bleak assessment of that costs are likely to continue to rise. And you do hear that, you know, the Fed's not trying to take inflation to zero. They're trying to take 8% inflation and somehow get it slowly back to 2%. We have towns that are flush with cash, the state's flush with cash, more infrastructure money's coming. It's not like construction is going to just grind to a halt. So, you know, I think we have to really be serious here. And I think we're trying to put on rose-colored glasses. And I would like to know from SMMA, is there a difference if we went ahead and made those hard decisions now versus 60%, does that make a difference in their process and in the overall project cost?
So if you take them now, it makes a difference in the project cost because you're removing them from the construction cost.
No, I mean, if we ultimately made those cuts at 60% versus now, would there be a difference in the overall project cost of doing so? The same cuts.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Matt.
So, okay, let's just say at 60%, we make the decision, the hard decision of, let's say, you know, cut the size of the gym. Okay. If we instead made that decision now, would that be a cheaper way to achieve that ultimate result than to wait to 60% to make the same decision? Or is it a wash? It's like, oh, you could just wait to 60 and then make such a big decision without a big impact on, you know, your scope in creating the construction documents. That's the point.
Yeah, so I will say here, it will not change our scope, whether we do it now or at 60. You know, we have a lot of documentation to do and advancement to do. The DD phase is such a significant phase for us. So if you're wondering, am I going to come back and say, I need an additional service? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to understand, is it easier to, you know, bite the bullet now or bite the bullet later? What I fear is you get to a certain stage of the project and you say, we're too far down the road. We can't change course at this point. And now we're stuck with some of these other bad choices. Whereas if we just made the hard decision now, then, you know, we would have a clearer path. I want to get us into a position where, you know, we are realistic and that we're proceeding along a realistic path where we're not constantly worrying, are we, you know, out of bounds and we're going to have to re-scope everything.
So the 60% is my line in the sand, Matt. Like that is the
Okay,
point
just-
of no return for us.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's like, is that, are we, is there a slope to that line in the sand, or is it flat and then there's a cliff? That's what I don't understand. Is it, you know,
So
is it
we
gonna
have-
cost us another few million because we waited till 60% or not?
It's not going to cost you any more. I'm not sure. It's not going to cost you any more.
See, I'm just curious what your construction documents are doing, if they're for something that ultimately is gonna have to change, you know?
Well, there's a lot of details that are consistent for the entire project. This is a school, so a large portion of this project is classrooms and the cafeteria spaces. So there's a lot of work for us to do. The design of the building will advance, but that, you know, like I said at the intro, these are not death by 1,000 cuts. This is large scale project scope to come out to make these numbers work. So we'd be extracting entire components of the project.
This is something, Matt, that we talked a lot with the architects about, or I've talked a lot, you know, just to try to understand what it would mean at 60% to make those changes. And I think I understand your question. Does it cost more if we wait to 60% to make those changes than if we made those changes now? And what I'm hearing Lorraine say is that it doesn't, but there are those risks if we make those changes now, that we would take something big out that doesn't need to be taken out.
Yep.
Because we don't have enough information. I want to make sure that everybody participates in this conversation, and I would really love to see a lot of hands up. And
I did have one more question to Pat, which is, I mean, you have to recognize that there's like a triple whammy here, because the way that taxpayers see this is through their tax bill that comes from the bonds that are issued that depend upon the interest rates, which are also going up.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we stay in budget, it's likely that the tax impacts are going to be higher than what was estimated originally. And so that's why, if we really, you know, err to the downside, that may actually get us to, from a taxpayer's perspective, back to what the original expectation was. So I think that erring to the downside is actually a good thing. It's not like, oh, you know, a problem.
No, so I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that the town voted a project, and they voted a number on that project. And there were risks involved in voting in that number. We didn't know what the exact cost to the taxpayers were going to be. We could make some pretty strong guesses, but I'm not sure this committee can dwell on that. I think that this committee needs to dwell on how we get this project into what the town voted for, what our best path is to get this project to what the town voted for at town meeting and the ballot, without going way over, without going over the budget, if that's what we choose, unless we all decide, oh, well, let's go back and ask for more money, but we're not.
Right, but the money is what the town voted on.
The town voted on money for a specific project, but that's all I want to say about that.
I'd like to respond a little bit to some of Matt's comments too.
Okay, sure, Ian.
If you could, thanks. So I think you're right, Matt, in saying that this scenario is a best case scenario here, the option one, because that's as good as it could get. Well, I wanted to show you an option to how you could potentially stay within the budget, right? Including using the bidding contingency. That's a best case scenario. The worst case scenario on the other side of it is you have to cut $5 million out of the project in order to get to the construction budget without the bid contingency, right? So that's a big window of you know, it's vastly different project that you're looking at for a best case scenario versus a worst case scenario. And the important thing again is to talk about timing and when you should consider if you need to make those types of cuts. And what we've said, I'll say it again, is we think that there's time. There's time to do that at 60% CDs. You could be having the same exact conversation at that point in time, but you're closer to bid, you're more informed about the market, and you've taken away some of the unknowns. And that's the only difference between now and 3 months from now, right?
Court, your hand was up next.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm hearing that were changes necessary now or at 60%, the cost burden to the town would be the same. We wouldn't be paying an add-on to make those changes later. I certainly want to hope for the best, but I want to manage to a realistic worst case scenario, given the factors that the estimators have brought our way. Betting on things improving greatly is probably not wise if we're holding to our timetable, in my opinion. So based on the discussion that followed Matt Johnson's question, I'm now asking, were we to try to manage to budget now, would we be managing to budget again at 60%, i.e. doing it twice? And my crystal ball says that's what I heard today, is were we to make manage to budget changes today, we'd be doing it yet again. And so I wonder if that then would have really deleterious effects. We say that doing it once at 60 wouldn't, but what if we were to do it twice? I'm guessing it might. Wonder if any comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Court, one of my concerns is, what do you take out at this point? You know, if this trend continues, what are you taking out? What are you not building? You know, we're not, there's a lot that we wouldn't be building.
And we're doing more piecemeal adaptation to times and budgets, and thus design.
And that's why we think one, you know, as bad as it might be, but one hard cut that you have to do, one, you know, with larger items is a more efficient use. So just, obviously, we're still trying to hit a target, right? We're trying to hit 100% bidding in March. We're trying to hit that target. So the goal is, you know, that the ask is, do we think it's going to be more beneficial to wait and, you know, see what the market does, and then if we have to adjust, we have to adjust. If we adjust now, we push out. If we have to adjust again at 60% CDs, we push out again. Right. So we're trying to be,
Lorraine,
no one has a crystal ball, but we're trying to be as efficient as we can and try and keep your scope, you know, if we can.
Let me just let me stay on this just for a second, Lorraine. If you had to take two bites at the apple, one now and one again later, would it really be a great disadvantage to the project and to your work? Am I hearing that you'd rather do it once, even if it was more severe?
We would definitely rather do it once. I will tell you, it will have a schedule impact if we have to do it twice. You know, we'd have to do it now and then do it again later.
Thank you. Okay.
Lori, I think your hand was up next.
Thanks, Pat. I just think it's really important that we engage the community as this all plays out, which seems to me the gift of time that we have between now and the fall estimates gives us the opportunity to do that and to let them know that there's stakes of the magnitude Lorraine is naming. We've had a lot of community engagement and a lot of positives about transparency. I don't think we want to risk that at this point. I think my other comment, and I don't have the answers to this, but just having lived the second layer of the high school decisions that were made, it took us 7 years to get funding to pave the road that got value managed. So sometimes you're just deferring costs, and I want to be sure we're thoughtful of that as well in the decision-making process. So I think we should hold the course for now, using the time between now and the 60% to get informed, get the community engaged, and be ready for whatever decisions come.
Thank you, Lori. Charlie, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I guess, my comment and question is what do we really know about the impact of these scope changes? I think what we're seeing is that we've got value management, death by 1,000 cuts, which are kind of saying, well, that's really not the way to go. We're really saying, well, scope cuts would be the way to go if we were to try to manage this situation from a budget point of view. So we had the suggestion of scope changes for the as one alternative for the auditorium and for the gym, and I think it would be good to know what the impact would be of that from a financial point of view. It would also be good to know what the other alternatives are, what the other options are. I just don't think we've had the analysis to have a picture of what we would do and what this would mean. I mean, nobody wants to cut anything, but we have a problem, and it would be good to have a field of vision on the whole situation from what can we do? And we don't have that right now. So you really would need to put that, I think, in front of the committee before the committee could say, yeah, let's do this or let's do that. Because you foreclose opportunities by jumping on certain options now that aren't clear. So that's my comment about that, and that's my request.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Heather.
Thanks. So, and I think I'm gonna be quick because most of what I was gonna ask or say has already been said, mostly by Court and Lori. To Court's point, I think it's a very good point that if we were to start messing with this now, we might have to do it again. That was one of my concerns also. And of course, like Lori, I'm always thinking about the community involvement, reaction, concerns. Obviously, there will be concerns on both sides here in terms of cutting versus not, but I will just quickly weigh in to say I feel very strongly that we should not be making changes now with less information and no community input when we can see what it looks like at 60% CD. And at that point, to Charlie's point, actually look at more detailed options. If we need to make some hard decisions, let's have more information before we do it. So I feel like it would be very rash to start making scope changes now before we know the full situation.
Thank you, Heather. Lorraine, what if we wait for the 60%, in between now and then, is there information that this committee can have, to somewhat to Charlie's point, that helps us understand what those options are?
Yeah, what those value management ideas are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely we can. I mean, we have, it's not that we haven't been thinking about them, Charlie. We have. We've gone back down through the cost estimate. The first thing you do is try and look at what are the big dollar items and see what can you do instead, right? So I think we can absolutely come up with, a list of those items. But again, I'm talking about $500,000 items at a time. Like we're talking about chunks of dollars. So we can generate that list and then start talking about them at a subsequent building committee meeting.
Well, for example, no ideas were presented on the instructional side of the building. I'm not suggesting that we would make changes there, but that wasn't presented as an option.
So Charlie, I'm always going to be the one to say you're building a middle school and we need classrooms. So, the classrooms are vital to the school component. So generally we're going to look at what are things that you could either add back. And I heard Laurie loud and clear about the road at the high school, but are there things that you could defer that could be done later? And I just think of, anyone doing a home renovation right now. You look at what is essential and what you can do later, and you don't back yourself into a corner that you can't do it. So I think, my guidance to the committee would be to take those things and really think about, the school is essential. The classrooms are essential, to operate, but are there things that are not essential that could be done later, albeit deferred and still a burden to the town to deal with if that's what you want in the future?
So we could have sort of a plan B or a list for us to consider so that we're not waiting until October to start considering those things.
Yes. Yes.
And we could meet as a committee in between and look at those things and be prepared.
Yes.
And
For
we
sure.
go into October with more information.
Well, you might want a couple of meetings. This is a complex topic, very complex.
Yeah. Charlie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Chris,
Oh, thanks.
I knew it started with a C.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No, thanks. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think picking up on Lori's point, the outreach will be a helpful way of getting more information out to the public about what we're coming up with, and a few more specifics so they can get, pardon the pun here, more concrete information about what's happening. So for example, if we could have more examples of the specific projects that are being bid now that are coming in much higher, that helps people understand, for example, oh, there's a middle school in this town that's 100 million, and this is what they're seeing. So you're getting your price sticker shock. To Ian's point, when you go back and ask for more money, at this point, the risk isn't asking for too little or overcutting. I think the risk is we don't have enough. And if we were to go back to increase the budget, we might not ask for enough. So that's why we need a whole lot more information before we can even get into the notion of saying this is going up. And then the last point, I think based on what the estimators are telling us, if everything were to settle out over the next 9 months, a year, it almost seems like the best case scenario is the project is up by 10% if we're lucky. So just things to think about, but I do like the outreach. We have to have more meetings. We have to really get into this more to convey everything we know to the community so we can make intelligent decisions about what sort of cuts they are throughout. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. We are going to have to, we do have a vote on we need hopefully to come to some kind of a recommendation to our design team. And it's 9 o'clock. Peter, I don't want to cut you off. Peter Fashilis, I saw your hand up if you've got a question, but I just want to be mindful that we don't want to lose our quorum before we get to making a decision on this.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I just wanted to weigh in as a member saying I totally agree with others, Lori and Chris, that we need to do more community outreach, and we're at just an unprecedented time. And while yes, interest rates may go up and costs may continue to go up in some areas, one thing I do know is that you can't continue to see a doubling of roof costs and electrical costs, and just the way lumber shot up and then has come crashing down. So I think the more we can get along to the 60%, the better we're going to be.
All right, does anyone feel like we're not ready to take a vote on this? And the question, someone's gonna have to pose this as a motion, but and Court, you've raised your hand, you're really good at this. Do you have a motion?
In a moment, I have a question first. Or actually a request, and that is that this committee discuss as a committee what community outreach looks like. Because this is a political decision, this is a financial decision, this is a school design decision if necessary. And we could have multiple agendas operating, having never discussed them. So, are we preparing the community for cost escalation? Are we preparing community for a scope reduction. I think this committee deserves the clarity before we try to bring that clarity to the larger community. Given what I know about the status that we're in, yeah, I'm certainly prepared to make a motion, but I would like the chair's response to that. Will we have some opportunity to work at a committee level around what outreach looks like?
I think I agree with you 100%, Cord, and I'm really grateful that we have Heather and Alexa still, chugging away for us on our community outreach. We're going to need to schedule additional meetings, I believe, over the summer and hope that we can get a quorum. I mean, this is a hard time, but I think that there are things we're going to need to be talking about. So no question.
And if I can just echo that response, Cord, I completely agree. I would love to have committee input on what the communications are. I don't want the pressure to all be on Alexa and me to decide what we're saying. So 100% on board with you there.
So I'm prepared to make a motion to the effect that we accept the current findings on estimates and that we revisit the estimates at the 60% stage, recognizing that we will have to make decisions at that point, and that is indeed our final opportunity.
Second. Oh, sorry, Heather. I was gonna second with the verbiage
Either way.
that that we're asking SMMA to proceed into construction documents, I think is the ultimate.
That's the
Language.
essence of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we have to include that language.
Yeah, just because that's what the contract, I believe, something like that. So, okay. So
Language to include on the motion that they are to proceed.
With contract documents, yeah.
okay.
If there's a second, I'd love to hear comments about this. I'm sure the chairs would.
Second.
Any discussion, comments, questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to state that my hesitation here is that in my career, I've never seen a case in which proceeding with design led to a way that you could make changes later as efficiently or effectively as you could if you did it earlier. I mean, and again, I'm not an architect, I'm not a construction manager, but I've never seen a process where if you wait, it ends up being the same cost and is in same schedule impact as if you did it earlier.
Matt, I don't disagree. My concern is that the likelihood is so great. If we make a move now, we're going to make yet another move and do it in stages. So that's what has me really conflicted on this.
And I would just like to say that we do have architects and we do have construction managers who are making this recommendation and who have a great deal of experience in this area. This is really hard, and certainly I'm pretty risk adverse myself, but I think we're in such an unprecedented time that it really seems prudent to me to listen to our professionals who have the bulk of experience in this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I remember we had more than ample contingencies built into our, SD estimate, and it wasn't, it's just, I realize, I mean, you can be professional and still maybe not have the answer. So and again, that's not that I have a better answer. I'm just in this place where I really do feel we need to show backbone, sooner rather than later, I think.
Any other comments, questions? Then are we ready to vote? So, Court, you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, I'll be happy to do so, but I am gravely concerned. I think Matt has expressed it well. Nonetheless, I think the risk of doing this twice is significant. And on the assumption that we're going to have to do it once, and it's going to be more difficult at 60% than it would look today. So be it. We're going to have to do it, and not put the community into an uproar about it. I don't want to divide the community. None of us do. So to restate the motion, I move that the committee authorize the design team to proceed with construction documents, and that we revisit the estimates at the 60% stage. Dawn, is that language sound okay?
That sounds great. Thank you, Court. Do you want me to second that? I'm happy to. I think Heather did originally,
I
so
think we
maybe I
did.
leave it to her. Yeah.
All right, so I'm actually drawing it. So I'm just going to do a roll call vote for yes. Those who agree. So Alexa, are you still on your phone?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yes is my vote.
Court,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Frank Cannon. Frank, are you still with us?
He's saying yes, but he's on
He's
mute.
saying yes.
Okay, okay. Justin? Oh, you're not a
Yes.
voting member. Peter,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Matt,
Nay.
Chris,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
and Matt is off. And I am a yes. So it's,
Pat, you forgot Steve.
oh, Steve, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You've got two
Well-
lines in my, Steve, are you
Yeah.
with us? Yeah,
I'm a yes.
you're a yes. Okay. All right, and so it passes, and let the record show. I think before we go to the design development update, we need to decide on our next meeting. Ian, can you remind us when we're scheduled to meet again?
Be the third week of July.
So Lorraine, in terms of giving us any additional information that would help us, I mean, there's two things. There's having some more information that helps us think about what possible plan B could be, and also how we communicate to the community. Third week in July, will you have anything more to give us by then? Or before then, or?
No, I think by the third week in July, we're gonna have some of those big picture items of what it will take.
All right, it's actually the end, July 28th.
July 28th.
Okay. Heather, from your point of view, would you like the committee to have an opportunity to meet again to consider the communication to the community? Heather and Alexa, do you have?
I don't think it needs to be before July 28th. Unless there's, I mean, in terms of reaching out to the community, I think we would need a little more information from the committee that we're reaching out with. So I wouldn't feel like before then we're trying to reach out to the community with anything because we don't know what to share yet.
Cory, you raised this. Do you have any thoughts on the utility?
Well, yeah, I feel very strongly that the committee has to meet and discuss a purpose and intent of additional community outreach. We could summarize our findings on a single piece of paper today. And if we had a functioning media, we'd see this next week. But do we have other political designs held by members of the committee such that we are readying the community for a revisit on budget? If so, I think we need that known. Who feels, who believes what vis-a-vis what this communication means. So I want that handled at a committee level. Feel very strongly about that.
So are you advocating for an opportunity for the committee to get together to have this conversation, or would you like? I'm not.
I would ask that the committee have an opportunity to meet and have some kind of consensus, hopefully, or at least majority will dictate what an outreach campaign is to look like between now and the time we arrive at the 60% new estimates and wrestle with those.
So can that be on the agenda for the 28th? That's what I'm,
Are we 21st or 28th? Question.
28.
28, thank you. Well, I certainly would like it on the agenda, yes.
okay, that makes sense to me. I was just saying, I don't think we need a separate meeting before then to
Correct.
discuss it.
Yeah.
Because I think it'll be based on some of what we discuss at the 28th. So,
Okay,
My
great.
my concern would be a community campaign not vetted here first would then create dissension within this group, which would.
oh,
not-
I agree. We're not launching any community campaign
No.
before that.
No,
Thank you.
Totally agree.
Okay,
The only thing that will go, just to clarify, after every meeting, we send out a building committee report. It will be a very high level summary of what we've done today, which is just that we've voted to move forward, exactly what you said in your motion, Court. So that will go out in the building committee report, but that will be very high level. We're not launching any campaign before the 28th. I think we need more information and time before we launch some type of a campaign. So I would love it if that was on the agenda for the 28th. That would be great.
okay, great. All right. All
I got
right,
one last comment.
Charlie, yeah.
So I just wanted to make a quick comment for the preparation of the material. I think and following up on Matt's comment about the bidding contingency, I think the analysis should be done on the basis that we may need as much as 5 million in scope changes. Not saying that we would want to pursue that, but we need to look at that much. I see head nodding of the head. So 5 or 5.5 million is really the right number to be scoping out.
Okay,
Did I get acknowledgement of that?
Yeah.
We have a VM log that far exceeds what you need to get back to budget. So.
all right. I want to move along, but Court, I see your hand is up
Yeah,
again.
I'll make this one really quick. We have the unusual good fortune of not building to MSBA current enrollments, but rather to projected needs of the town. I'm going to ask that on the 28th, when we reconvene, if Lori Hunter might bring us enrollment projections for next year. Are we still trending down? Are we leveling out? We're designing at 700 for an anticipated 650, and I'm just curious where those numbers are going based on most current information. If we could look at that in a month, that would be helpful to me. Thank you.
My request is any informational asks go through the chairs. to
Well,
me
I'm
and
asking
get
it to the
please.
group here so they can agree or disagree. Thank you. I just, in the interest of transparency, just wanted to share with you something that I think was important. I don't want to do it offline. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so our next order of business is design development update. And it is 9:24.
Sure, so I'll try and be quick. So we'll finish putting together, we had issued the draft report. You all got the estimating package and the drawings. We're going to complete the report, include we got comments from the OPM, we got comments from the commissioning agent. We'll respond to those, we'll include them, we'll package them with the estimates and the reconciliation sheets you've seen here. And we'll finalize that report in probably about a week or a week and a half with the holiday. Just to close the door, as we do need to complete that. As part of the DD, I mentioned we did some additional educational programming, which is very typical. You go back and we've been meeting with your town boards, discussing permitting, meeting with water and septic system reviews. Our architect Jen had a meeting with has a meeting with the building inspector today to do a page turn, just to make sure that everybody in the community who'll be responsible for approving permits on this project is up to speed on what it is. With that said, we had a number of items and discussions that came out through those meetings that require proprietary votes. There are systems that you use in the town that are items for maintenance, items for connectivity between the schools. And in your package, Ian had sent out a eight or nine, I forget which it was, 8 proprietary items. We would need a vote on those at your next meeting because we'd like you to have time to look at them. And if there's any questions we can answer. But proprietary votes per the Inspector General do require an acknowledgement by the awarding authority, because you need to understand that while we're putting in a particular product, there is still competition on the vendors. Many vendors are certified to install these products, but it does reduce a little bit of the competitive nature of it, and therefore the Inspector General requires votes on them. So just going through them, if you want to start at the top. So we have our access control system. Again, this is something that you have in the other buildings. So in order for connectivity and maintenance and the fact that your staff has all been trained on it, this is something we see in most communities today as just a continuation of your existing security system. The next item, I'll go through them all, and then if we have any conversations, we can. The next item is very small, but the exterior drinking fountain. In working with your water department, they have the parts to maintain it. They have the same exterior drinking fountains throughout the town, and they know how to manage them. They know how to maintain them. They have all the parts. It's one single thing, so it doesn't seem like a big ask. The next item was the door hardware. So again, very common. This is talking about the commercial locks. As your facilities go through from building to building, having a standardization in the keying system and the lock system is something we see with most communities. So again, many bidders can bid on the hardware. We're just buying the particular lock. HVAC BMS system, Johnson Controls, Metasys MS, again, a type of system. This has become more common. There are 5 or 6 installers who can bid on this product, so it provides your competitiveness through the bidding process. They'd be purchasing the product. The next item is the intrusion detection system. Again, it is currently throughout the school district. Your school district is used to using this. There's maintenance and training on it. So looking at the Honeywell Vista series. There are certified Honeywell installers. So again, same thing, you'll get multiple bidders. Your master clock system is American Time. This is the Ever Alert clock system, which is very specific because it produces the LED alerts. These have come a long way. It is something that there is no other manufacturer at this time who provides something similar. So one of the reasons this is proprietary is we are required by Mass General Law to provide or equals. And because there is no or equal, this would drive us into a proprietary bid. The next item is the security video management system, so the camera system. It's currently through some of your school buildings in town, and again, another way to maintain that universal connectivity with your other schools with training and familiarity with the maintenance of it. And I think there's 2 more. There is the septic denitrification system. So I believe everyone is aware that as we've moved through the design phase, and Steve is on from Niche, that we've been working closely with your town agents in the design of the septic system. And because of the location and the aquifer, this system will require a denitrification system. And because of the higher level of design that we're providing for this system in order to meet the needs and the goals for the community and paying attention to the water quality. This is something that is, this type of system provides that benefit, and this is something that working with your town, they would like us to include. So this would need to be a proprietary vote. And the last item is, so very similar. We have the bioretention systems on the site, as you may remember. We're doing a lot of stormwater management for water quality and water quantity. This particular stormwater treatment, Rain Guardian, mitigates the highest amount of TSS, the total solids. There are no equals at that level. And if we wrote a proprietary spec, we would get something less than, or did not write a proprietary spec, I apologize. We would get products that do not meet that high level of removal. So in order to achieve the highest level of removal of TSS of solids, this would require a proprietary vote to allow that. So there's a lot to take in. We sent them out in your package. The goal is that we can discuss them or vote on them at the next meeting. If people have questions between now and the next meeting, Pat, I would ask if they could send them through to you so that we could be prepared. In some cases, we may need some town staff to be at that meeting. I know there's a lot on the agenda, but we'd want to be a little bit more prepared for questions, as I cannot talk holistically to all of them.
Okay.
And from a cost standpoint, these were, correct me if I'm wrong, these were carried in the DD estimate. So they're
Yes, they
already
were.
preemptively in there from a cost standpoint.
Okay. So our next meeting is July 28th, and I'll turn to public comments. Do I see any public comments?
We had minutes.
Oh, minutes. Can we bump the approving these minutes to the next meeting, since it's already 9:30 and people are jumping out off? Okay, Carlin?
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. Quick question. The date in October when you're going to be reaching that deciding point of the 60% construction design, what's that date in October?
So it looks like there was a range up to October 14th.
It's mid-October, it's the 14th.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Christine? Christine Reynolds, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Pat. Yeah, so Chris Reynolds, I'm a member of the Finance Committee. I'm speaking for myself. So thank you for your discussion today and the presentations. Some of my concerns, I think, have been raised by members of the committee already. So you have a budget. The budget is as important as the design. And I think that the budget was recently developed, right? It's not an old budget. It's a budget that we came back with. I think the town voted it in January. So I think you have a problem, and not an insignificant one. And you don't have a lot of time between now and October to get there. So I would urge you to start now figuring out how you are going to adjust the design. You're going to need to. I don't think anything's going to get better. I understand the desire that it might, but I think someone said earlier, you can hope for the best, but you have got to plan for the worst. And the worst is you're at least $5 million over. And I think you've got to get at it.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
comments, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other? And yes, we do have our work cut out for us. So we will look forward to hearing from Lorraine and crew at the next meeting, getting some possible more insight into what we could be looking at if we have to cut, and talking about our communication to the community. I thank everybody for coming. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you, Chris. Alexa?
Yep, sure.
Court?
Yes.
Heather?
I think she's gone.
Frank? Can't see him, but Frank, are you? Yes, I think you're saying yes. Just, I'm sorry, Peter Fishalis?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes, and thank you, Pat.
Lori?
Yes, and just a reminder, we don't know what the state's doing with the virtual meeting decisions
yeah.
after the 15th of July. So keep an eye on your emails. Hopefully they're going to extend it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Matt?
Aye.
Yeah. I'm a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Matt Root is gone. Stephen? Stephen Stashewski, are you still with us? All right.
Job.
Okay, so I call this meeting over. Thank you very much. This was a very helpful and very thoughtful discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.